All right, welcome back. This time, we're focusing on a major development in Nigeria's energy landscape, the Dangote refinery fuel supply strategy. As operations gather pace, many are asking, what does this mean for our fuel economy, pricing, and energy independence?
Well, that's right. With nationwide distribution of PMS and diesel slated to begin mid-August, using a fleet of CNG-powered tankers, the stakes are high. Today, we'll be examining both the opportunities and the risk tied to this new supply strategy.
We'll also be looking at how this could impact Nigeria's long-term energy security, domestic refining capacity, and consumer costs, not just in urban centers, but in rural communities as well.
So, is this the game changer many hope it will be, or do we need to watch for possible pitfalls around the competition, monopoly concerns, and logistics?
Well, joining us to help make sense of all of this is development economist, Professor Ken Ife. Prof, it's good to have you on Good Morning Nigeria yet again.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to be here.
So, Prof, you're welcome once again. Is this the game changer we're all hoping for?
It's not only a game changer, but it's an innovative game changer, so to say. But what is distinct about this is that this has thrown a lifeline. When you say lifeline, there's a presumption that some players in the sector are dead. Because when the petrol stations in the rural areas are no longer functioning because they can't get fuel, whatever the reasons are, and then half of the stations are struggling, then a lifeline means you are bringing a lot of them back to life. You are going to create employment, not destroy employment. But I want to tell you something that is fundamental to the Nigerian economy. The biggest challenge, I see it from a development point of view, is that it's investment, lack of investment. And this investment can come from three sources. It could come from the private sector, foreign investors. It could come from domestic investors, and it could also come from government. What problem we have is that much of the things that you expect to come from government are borrowed money, and then there's a consequence when you borrow, especially where that borrowing methodology doesn't quite fit into the fiscal law, which is the Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007. That has so many prescriptions, but it's a story for another day. Foreign direct investment comes in two ways. You have the FDI, or you have the portfolio investment. Portfolio comes and goes, it's hot money. But FDI comes to stay. They take a longer-term view of your economy. But domestic investment is the one we tend to ignore. And that's why if you see a company that Dangote that put $20 billion, how much foreign direct investment have we got in the last 5 years? It's less than what has been invested there. But the point is this: where you don't invest in technologies, in innovation, then that sector or subsector starts dying. It starts being uncompetitive. And then they start behaving funny. They want to form monopoly. They want to go to government for subsidy. That is actually what happens. You need to have investment. And even if you want to fight corruption, you need investment. Because you need a computer system to fight corruption. You need that, you need that. You spend money to do anything you want to do. So always be mindful that whenever anybody tells you that this sector or that sector or this, you started by saying, how can we, energy security? You cannot achieve energy security if you don't have investment. It is the investment that will create competitive business environment, and then rather than look for subsidy from government, you can now compete and sell your products abroad because you are producing good quality product at a competitive cost. So that is a big thing. So when you relate this to the top sector we are looking at, which is the fuel storage, transport, distribution, and logistics, that sector has been moribund in the sense that it hasn't been investing in that subsector. So what you see there is fueled by corruption and that kind of monopolistic behavior. Obviously, the big culprit is NNPC actually, because he's playing at upstream, midstream, and downstream, have his own petrol stations. I'm not sure what he's doing with those because he doesn't actually produce the fuel that they're going to sell. But then you now have this gang up of the subsector groups that we saw what they did, the subsidy scandal. Everybody saw that in the country where things were being brought in, 30 million later will come, they recorded it 3 times, I say 90. We saw all that. And then government was prompted to say NNPC, take over all the import of that. And they understand what I mean. But it was only delivered you from the mouth of a lion into the mouth of a crocodile. So, we had to face a different kind of challenge with NNPC's monopoly. Because what we saw was that it was not even just being the sole exporter, but actually using crude swap, which means it denies central bank access to that $3 billion every month by swapping. And then what comes back is MPMS. And PMS is only one of several products you can get from the crude. But it now turns around and says to government, you are owing me under recovery. Government borrows 500 billion naira every month as subsidy. And then one of the dinosaurs in that subsidy chain was the equalization fund, which people are crying now, owing us 100 billion. But the PIA rolled off equalization fund. We are now left with the midstream and downstream component of the DFA and the people. So that is what is going on. But having said that, we needed investment in the sector, just like infrastructure. Why are we having problems with infrastructure? Because we've not been investing in infrastructure since 1970.
Okay.
And when you don't invest, our stock of infrastructure is 30% compared to South Africa that is 80%.
But now that we have investment, now that we have investment with Dangote and it's about to roll out 4,000 trucks to do distribution of CNG, what is the broader significance for the economy?
Now the broader significance is what is the strategic value? What is the value added to 2 major clients, our stakeholders, 2 core stakeholders, 230 million Nigerians and 42 million MSMEs. Now, the significance of the MSME is this. Nigeria has 42 million MSMEs out of 90 million MSMEs in Africa. We contribute 48% of MSMEs in Africa. Our population is only 15%, our population is only 18% of Africa. Our GDP is less than 15% of Africa, but we are punching 3 times above our weight on entrepreneurship, which means entrepreneurship is not only a competitive advantage for Nigeria, but it is one where if you can breed life and efficiency to this sector, nobody will see Nigeria's back all over the world. So that is the limiting thing holding Nigeria from taking off. So when you look at this, divide that 1.7 trillion by 230 million Nigerians, everybody gets 7,400 naira as a gain. Divided, if the household in Nigeria is 6 people per household, that is 50 million household. Each person gets about 42,000. If you look at divided by the 42 million MSMEs, you're going to get about 40,000 naira. So there is actually a tangible thing that you can say is hitting the table, but it's much more than that. Let me tell you why it's much more than that. These companies we are talking about, at least 70% of their input cost that determines their efficiency, that determines their competitiveness, is locked down in this shenanigan. They can't. They have to. According to the research, if you look at the website of Manufacturers Association, it tells you that companies believe 77% of their energy cost is borne by them. So you are going to unlock not only the cost for running their generator, but also the cost of transporting goods. That's what you are going to unlock in the journey to make them far more efficient. And then they come. And when they produce efficiently, aggregate output goes up, GDP goes up. When you bring down the price by making it more affordable and more affordable and more accessible to Nigerian citizens, and there's a gain, then they have more disposable income. Then the aggregate consumption goes up, GDP goes up. Just by default, you've seen how this can actually shoot up the GDP. When you modulate the price, then inflation takes a hit. Is there any evidence? Of course, there was an evidence. And in fact, part of this evidence is before you go national, people will ask you, where did you pilot? Where's your pilot? There was a pilot in December. And we know what happens in December. Cyclical peak of inflation is in December. High cost of fuel is in December. Hoarding of fuel, long queues, they are all characteristics of what happens in December. So that December, they decided to pilot. And they said, okay, let's try and maintain the price across the country. So price was maintained, but it cost them equalization of over 10 billion. But the effect was that for the first time, the inflation on food came down in December. It normally doesn't happen because that's when we have a cyclical peak. But it came down. And so there was an evidence that there could be an impact. And that impact is what is now going national. And the impact will be felt by every Nigerian and every business. And in fact, I called it a lifeline because those who are arguing about competition and monopoly and all of that, you are bringing them back into life.
Now, will this investment ensure stability in pricing? Because it's a major challenge for ordinary Nigerians. They want price stability. For instance, they want the same price in Abuja, the same price in Kano, the same price in my local government. So how would he ensure price stability across board?
It's ensures in two ways. One is to enforce that price across all domains, which you saw happen in December. Two is to maintain supply, because if you don't get supply, then the people are going to start behaving, they hoard whatever they have, and then they inflate higher price, and we don't have a choice. So that is having a steady supply, that then having a price, and then being able to suck out that cost of logistics, because somebody has to bear that cost. Now, what that means, I want to tell you what it means. What the president has done is unbelievable. That is, he has religiously implemented PIA law. Religiously. And in doing that, he has transferred subsidy from the public sector to the private sector. And you are going to ask a question, but is it sustainable? What is in it for Dangote to be splashing 1.7 billion?
Yes,
no. If federal government was to do this subsidy, it will cost us at least 5 trillion. It would have cost 3 times more. That is what he's sucking out. And what he's doing is actually now going to bring down the prices, now make it more accessible, now bring efficiency in our factors of production, and in the industry that are crying. Let me give you an example that is really pathetic. There are some mission-critical industries or services that cannot afford to continue under the current dispensation. You have the airports. How many times have you been sitting on the lounge and then they take off light? The Air Force should have 24/7 lighting. They shouldn't have one. How many times have you seen people in operation theater and the light goes off in the hospital? The hospitals are mission critical. Then you look at telecom. Thousands of base stations all over, and each one of them have 2 generators backing up, and they can't get fuel. When they get them, they pay through their nose, and you think they won't transfer the price to you. And we are fighting over their price. But that is a major factor. And you cannot afford not to continue your call. This continuation on your call is going on every time. How about the banks? You use their system, transferring money, they have to have light 24/7. That's the banking sector. So therefore, these sectors get assurance. They need steady supply. They need prices managed down. And that's for them to grow, for our costs to come down. Our costs cannot come down if you don't address these issues, the nairas and kobos involved in these issues. Prices will never come down.
Okay, what opportunities or challenges other players, in the industry are likely to face in the light of this Dangote investment, and how can they key into it and benefit?
Absolutely. The key to keying in is that what I saw from his offer is just to extend he's not interfering on the upstream, midstream, and downstream. That company is in the midstream. He hasn't said, okay, I'm going to take over some retail stations, and then they will see it as being monopolistic. But all he's doing is what he's entitled to do. I want to deliver my product to the point of need. So he's just delivering his product. Look, there are 3 ways you can actually deliver this product. The most efficient is pipeline, where we have 24 stations, but the pipelines are not working. So he can't use, and it's not owned by him, it's owned by NNPC. So he can't even use that unless. Number two is to use train. Train is the cheapest, most effective way of bulk goods. But that's, again, problem with train. And we don't have this. The last time we seriously invested in rail was in 1927. But anyway, then the next one left for you is to go by road. Now, we can't use inland waterways because it doesn't reach everywhere. So using the road brings another challenge, environmental sustainability. And thank goodness, our commitment to carbon decarbonization is using a transition fuel, which is gas, for the next 30 years. And we have gas. We are flaring 18% of world gas, flaring. So now, our president has done what he could with the resources available to him. He could have done more. World Bank told us that NNPC trapped 50% of that subsidy. So whatever was left to the president, he just had to satisfy the governors by doubling their FAC and then puts on CNG initiative, and then the little one left, he gave 2 million fertilizer bags to farmers and then palliative. He didn't have enough money. If he had 100% of that subsidy, he would have done more. And so you see that CNG initiative, as good as it is, he needed investors to come in. It's not a foreign investor that will invest there. Domestic investors. So that is a huge leap on that program to make sure that you have the infrastructure, distribution infrastructure to distribute the CNG. So that's why do 100 of these things I committed to that.
So in your opinion, Prof, is this a threat to existing marketers or an opportunity?
It is an opportunity.
Or is it an opportunity to restructure the downstream sector? Some say it's an attempt at monopoly.
Oh, goodness me. I've told you how you define monopoly. You look at competitiveness. You have to compete. If you don't compete, then what happens is that you are ripe for takeover. Somebody's going to take you over because you are competing. You are not competing. You are going to be there. And when you are not competing, you are not investing, and you are not innovating, what you are now looking for is strange behaviors, monopolistic behavior. You run to government. You fraud. All of these things are things that have kept the citizens and the businesses down. Just what have kept them down. So what has happened is that the nature of the intervention is what I'm going to describe. The nature of the intervention is, I want to settle this supply chain. I want to invest in this infrastructure. I want to deliver this to the last mile. I want to do this, I want to do that. Is he being selective? He didn't say so. He didn't say to you, you cannot use your tanker to come to my gantry to take fuel. He didn't say nobody will come. If you go and do it, and then you count your costs, and if it is cheaper for you to use the one that will come to you, then you make your decision. He didn't. Secondly, is he trying to muzzle out all these retailers and take over? That's not the objective. The objective is, let me show you. If you look at the stack, 840 naira per liter. Who is getting what in that 840 naira per liter? You have the people who prospected for the oil and exploiting. You have the people who drilled to bring out the crude. You have the transportation of that crude to the factory refinery, which could be by shipping it or by using pipeline or whatever. Yep. Then you have the refiner. Now, all these people are sharing this 840 naira. But then what happens? The middlemen and the pump are grabbing 1,200 naira. Let's just look at the difference. The people that have invested $20 billion and invested so much more, $5 billion.
Okay, Prof.
So all those people are struggling for pennies.
Prof.
While one big mouth is taking almost 40%.
Okay, Prof. Because of time, just before you go, just tell us how other players can actually key into this initiative in just 1 minute, because our time is up.
Right. The offer is for groups and companies and businesses to register for this, and they are voting with their feet, and that is really good news. They are voting with their feet.
Okay.
Then the two is that it doesn't discriminate. It doesn't stop the status quo, but it just offers a lifeline. It offers another business opportunity. So those who are interested are actually responding very positively. And then looking into the future, the question will be, what else can we do to improve the thing? Because everybody will benefit. Those existing in the business gets more assurance of supply. Otherwise, the alternative is what we are having. importing 200 million liters of adulterated products, and then fighting, looking for who will equalize and give you free transport. It's not going to happen. With the current NNPC structure, it's not going to happen. So you are still feeding people with poor quality fuel, 5 times more sulfur, destroying. That's what is going on, and that's the status quo.
All right. Professor Ken Ife, development economist, we thank you very much for your time on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you.
And we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Well, that's been the program. We thank you very much for watching. I'm Victor, as well. See you next time.
And I'm Ademola Adeoye. Thanks for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Of time in the kaleidoscope of life,